and to new worlds. At the end of the 15th century, the age of discovery begins. Advances in shipbuilding and navigation make it possible. European seafarers discover America and the sea route to India. The old Arabic trade routes lose their importance. Quite suddenly, Europe has the advantage, and the Muslim world seems to have fallen too far behind to catch up. The year Columbus discovers America, Muslims lose their last stronghold in Western Europe. Under the pressure of the Christian advance, the Emir of Granada quits Spanish soil forever. He leaves his city without a battle to save it from destruction. Granada's Alhambra Palace remains a shining reminder of the golden age of the Islamic world. Islamic science and learning will now stagnate for 500 years. But not Islamic power. In the East, the situation is quite different. A resurgent Muslim power besieges the last remaining Christian stronghold on the borders of Asia. The Turkish Ottomans attack Constantinople, still the biggest and richest city of Christendom, ushering in the mightiest Muslim empire of all time. The Ottoman Empire. It covers a wide sweep of North Africa, the Middle East, and the Balkans. It has been poised at the gates of the greatest Christian city on earth, Constantinople, today's Istanbul. By taking this city, the Turkish sultans and their empire enter world history. 1453, Turkish forces besiege the capital of the ailing Byzantine Empire. They have the most powerful military technology in the world, cannons. For months, the citizens hold out against the siege. Then, the chronicles tell us, an advance guard find a forgotten gate in the fortifications. Suddenly, the defenders find their enemies behind them, inside the city. Constantinople falls. Christian citizens of the Ottoman Empire have to pay a special kind of tax. Each family is forced to give up a son to become an elite soldier for the Sultan. The harvest of the boys. Forcibly converted to Islam, they become disciplined troops. These Janissaries strike fear into the hearts of their European enemies for more than 200 years. There's another Muslim power in the world, at sea. It's no empire, but a few hundred daring sailors. In the 17th century, they become the terror of Europe's coasts. Berber pirates. Iceland in 1627. The peace of this isolated North Atlantic island is shattered by a pirate attack. Muslim corsairs. To the shocked villagers, they could be beings from another planet. The pirates aren't here to rape, pillage, or murder, but to do business. They kidnap healthy men and young women to ransom or to sell as slaves. Europeans are desirable goods. At the great North African Arab ports, white gold commands huge prices in the slave markets. Over 2 centuries, Muslim pirates capture and sell several 100,000 people. Berber pirates are intimidating and terrifying, but they never form a serious political threat. Unlike the Ottoman Empire. By the 17th century, it has already advanced into Eastern Europe. In 1683, it attacks the very capital of Central Europe, Vienna. A great Turkish army besieges the glittering home of the Habsburg emperors. In spite of furious resistance, the whole of Europe expects Vienna to fall. At the last moment, a Christian alliance defeats the Ottomans and forces them back eastwards into the Balkans. The Turks will never attack Central Europe again. In the 17th century, Europeans take over international trade. Their ocean-going ships pioneer sea routes to India and East Asia. The treasures of Asia, spices above all, can now be taken straight to European markets without going by the middlemen of the Near East. For hundreds of years, the caravans of the Silk Road brought luxury goods to the ports of the Mediterranean. But for more than a century, they have been losing business. With economic decline, cultural decline is inevitable. For a long time, the Ottoman Empire sees no scientific research. It has no universities, or even a mercantile middle class. It's a recipe for stagnation. By the end of the 18th century, the only form of education for the great majority of Muslims is religious instruction. Just when scientists in Europe are beginning to force nature to reveal its secrets, intellectual discourse in the Islamic world is limited to analysis of the Quran. When suddenly the modern world breaks in on the Orient. In 1798, Napoleon lands in Alexandria. From Egypt, he intends to conquer the entire Orient. Napoleon sheds blood, but he also brings laws. The French adventure in the Orient will end with Napoleon's defeat. But this invasion has made a deep impression on the Muslims. It has painfully exposed their backwardness. In the 19th century, European culture means Paris. An Egyptian ambassador will be sent there in 1826. His mission is to find out what lies behind Europe's superiority. Sheikh Rifat al-Tatawi explores the salons of the bourgeoisie, a glimpse behind the scenes of success. Al-Tatawi carefully notes down his observations. He's especially interested in printed sheets of paper. They call them newspapers or gazettes. Every day you can find out what's happening around the country. Even if they contain lots of lies, they also have a lot of useful information. It's amazing. In this country, even young girls can read and write. And the behavior of their elders seems even more strange to this young Egyptian. Fornication is considered a minor sin among these women. The men are slaves to their women and obey them, whether they are beautiful or not. Almost 200 years later, the role of women in society still divides Islamic and Western cultures. The headscarf and veil are powerful external symbols of Islam. In fact, clothes regulations vary between countries and social groups. The Quran does require women to cover their hair. That's no invention of Islam, but a custom in Arab societies since ancient times, especially for women in higher social classes. A veil, or a complete covering of the face, is mentioned nowhere in the Quran. Mid-19th century, European powers are competing to annex parts of the Islamic world into their own expanding empires. In this scramble for colonies, the British take the lead. Britain is growing into the greatest imperial power the world has ever known. By 1880, they control the Indian subcontinent, Malaya, and Burma, as well as large parts of Africa, including Egypt and the Sudan. In 1914, the Ottoman Turks joined the fighting on the side of the Germans. By this time, Enver Pasha's military government in Constantinople has deposed the last Ottoman Sultan. The Germans know that their ally is militarily rather weak, but they have other ideas how to use them against their enemies. In the archives of the German Foreign Office is a remarkable document. A top-secret plan for the deposed Sultan to announce a worldwide jihad against Britain and France. There would be terrorist attacks on the Suez Canal, suicide bombings of politicians, uprisings in British and French colonies. The German High Command believed that the Sultan has complete authority over Muslims, like the Pope in the Catholic Church. His word will be obeyed worldwide. It's a fatal misunderstanding. In Islam, there has never been one single central religious authority able to rally all Muslims across the world. The plan fails. But this is a global war for Muslims too. Hundreds of thousands fight in the Near East and in the trenches of Europe. Turks die beside Germans. Muslims from Algeria die for France. Indians die for the British. The Ottomans fight bravely, but theirs is a lost cause.